So far we have discussed about compressors. So compressors are basically work consuming devices. The opposite of it is your turbines. Okay, this is your turbine where it is work producing component. Okay, so this is your work absorbing component and this is your work producing component. So what happens here is the hot air gases that were compressed in compressor and then the chemical energy what has been asserted to them will be extracted. I mean the energy in them will be extracted in your turbine stages. Okay, so if you can see here, there is 4 sets of blade here, but the turbine stage is much higher, correct? So why? Because the huge amount of energy what is contributing to the whole process is actually in the combustor. The chemical energy what is being imparted into the gases, that energy to extract that energy, you need these many stages of turbines. So we've been talking about multiple times on spooling. What is spooling? High pressure turbine and low pressure turbine. So if you have 2 sets of compressor and 2 sets of turbine, you call it a twin spool, and if you have 1 set, you call it a single spool. So this looks like a single spool compressor and turbine arrangement with the 1 common shaft. Okay, so how exactly the turbine is extracting power, we'll see in the next part. So there is 2 types of power extraction. One is through impulse turbine and the other one is through reaction turbine. Okay, so first we'll look at impulse turbine. So this is an impulse turbine. So from the word impulse, what you can understand, impulse is like I think the word literally means jolt, like being hit on with something. Okay, so if these are your blades, the working fluid, be it water, be it combustion gases or any type of fluid, is directly hit or it will take hit on the blades. So this hit will tend to rotate the rotor. Okay, so thereby you are extracting the power. So this can be fluid at high velocity or fluid at high pressure. Usually this type, it is fluid at high velocity. Okay, so it is focused on through a nozzle, and then when it is facing the blade, the fluid will directly impart the kinetic energy onto the blades, thereby rotating the rotor. So that is your impulse turbine. While your reaction turbine, so reaction turbine will work on the will work on Newton's second law. So what it does, the way the fluid is exiting out of the turbine. So if you look in here, the fluid is passing through it. The fluid is passing through the turbine. That fluid is exiting out of the turbine in such a way that it will create 2 opposing forces. So one in this direction and the other one in this direction. So because of this, the fluid exiting, the reaction force will be in opposite direction. So thereby tending to rotate the turbine or the rotor in this direction. Okay, so here we'll just see the basic differences. So in an impulse turbine, you'll have you can have multiple inlets or nozzles to rotate your impulse turbine. So it is directly focusing on the blade. You can add another one here, you can add another. So next we'll go through what exactly is happening and how the states are changing across an impulse turbine and reaction turbine. So we'll see, first one is your single stage impulse turbine. Okay, so if you take an impulse stage, the stator blade will obviously act like a nozzle. So therefore the velocity will be increased. The velocity will be increased, but there is no energy transformation here in the sorry Okay. So we'll see what exactly goes in an impulse turbine and reaction turbine, and how these states vary across an impulse and reaction turbine. So, like your axial compressors, your turbines are a set of stator blades and rotor blades. So stator blades, that is which is static, and rotor blades which extract energy, maximum energy, and then your stator blades will act like nozzles, correct? So they'll aim at increasing the velocity before striking on the blade, be it impulse or be it reaction. Before it is entering to the rotor blades, the velocity will be increased. So if you look at an impulse stage, so this is your stator blades and this is your rotor blades. So obviously this will act like a nozzle, so thereby your velocity will increase and pressure will decrease. Okay, so one key thing to keep in mind here, in an impulse stage, the energy transformation, so that pressure is getting converted, so the static head is getting converted to kinetic pressure, so thereby increasing the velocity. That energy transformation takes place only in the stator section, while in the rotor section the velocity will decrease, so that is the kinetic energy is getting imparted into the rotor and thereby rotating it. But to speak of your static pressure will remain constant. Okay, this is one difference between impulse stage and the reaction stage, if you keep states in mind. Okay, so I'll just read this out, the same thing. So impulse machines are those in which there is no change of static or pressure head of the fluid in the rotor. So this is your rotor and there is no static change of pressure head. Okay, the rotor blade causes only energy transfer and there is no energy transformation. So energy transformation will only occur in your stator stage, that is kinetic energy, the static head is getting converted to your kinetic energy, or that is it is increasing the velocity, energy transformation. Okay, the energy transformation from pressure of static head to kinetic energy or vice versa takes place in the fixed blades only, that is your stator blades. Okay, and the rest all is just the same, you guys go through. So that is the main idea behind an impulse stage and the state variables, how the state changes across an impulse stage. An example of impulse turbine or paddy wheel, Pelton wheel and Curtis steam turbine. You'll come across all of this in your hydraulic turbines, in your turbo machines. So you'll study each of this. So I think the example part, it's okay. But for the propulsion part, you just know what exactly is going through in an impulse turbine. So next we have our reaction turbine. So in a reaction turbine, how the states are varying, how the state variables are varying. So in this reaction turbine, in both the cases, be it the stator or be it the rotor, the energy transformation is occurring. Okay, so if you see in the first state, the nozzle or the stator, which acts like a nozzle, will increase the velocity and gradually decrease the pressure. And when it comes to the rotor blades, the velocity will decrease and as well as the pressure will decrease. While in your impulse stage, this was constant. Okay, in the reaction stage, even here your energy transformation is occurring. Okay, so thereby you're transferring more amount of energy in here compared to your impulse stage. So the reaction machines are those in which changes in static or pressure head occurs in both rotor and stator blade passages, like I said in first point. And here the energy transformation occurs both in fixed as well as the moving blades. The rotor experiences both energy transfer as well as energy transformation. So your velocity is decreasing as well as your static pressure is decreasing, because you're losing kinetic energy and your static head both simultaneously. Okay, so here you can see velocity is increasing and pressure is decreasing, but in the rotor stage your velocity is increasing as well as your pressure is increasing, because there is both energy transfer as well as transformation, while in nozzle stage it is just energy transformation. Okay, which is common for both the cases. So there is energy transformation in in the stator stage in reaction as well as in impulse, but in your rotor stage the energy transformation occurs only in reaction, but energy transfer occurs in both the cases. Okay, so some of the example for reaction stage turbine or Hero's turbine, your lawn sprinkler and Parsons steam turbine are some of the examples of reaction turbines. So next is your multi-staging. So basically it is talking about having numerous sets of blade. Okay, not the combination of impulse and reaction. In a way it is, but purely not speaking about those two having combination of impulse and reaction stages. It is speaking about why just one stage is not necessary. Okay, so multi-staging, similar to your compressor, if you take your axial compressor, in one stage the amount of compression ratio you can achieve is about 1.5. So therefore, in its counterpart, the amount of energy extracted is also in a single stage is very low. So therefore, to extract the total energy that is there in a given combustion product, you need many stages of turbines. Okay, so that is about multi-staging. So it may be noted that for a given rotor speed, only a limited change in energy of the fluid can occur in single stage machines. So in only one stage, a very small amount of energy can be extracted, which is true for both compressors and turbines, which you've already seen. Hence, it is necessary that a large change in energy level is required. So to extract that huge amount of energy, you need more than one stages. Okay, so in this multi-staging, as an application of it, all of the blades can be impulse, all of the blades can be reaction, and all of the blades can be a combination of both impulse and reaction stages. Okay, so if you use any of this, you can employ the methods by which you extract energy can be three things. Firstly, you can employ extracting a huge pressure drop. So you are reducing the static pressure head, or you are reducing the kinetic energy in each of the stages. So which is parallel, which is vice versa, either that or either this, or a combination of both. So that is the way you can extract the energy by using any of the followings. Next, before we move on to velocity triangle, we'll finish this theory part. One is called as turbine cooling techniques. So as far as you know, the core combustion in your jet engine can sometimes reach up to 1800 to 2500 degree Kelvin. Okay, so like I said, we've discussed before, the combustion process will give you such high temperature. So that same amount of temperature cannot be sent to the turbine. Why? Because the turbine may not handle that huge temperature. The turbine can melt down, or there can be flow suppression because of high temperature. So there are different drawbacks. Okay, so the material might not handle it. So to overcome all of these drawbacks, firstly, the combustor outlet or the turbine inlet, if you have guide vanes, mostly you'll have guide vanes. So if you have those guide vanes, they'll be designed in such a way that they let the combustion products, depending on the requirement of the turbine, how it is designed. So in spite of that, controlling the temperature is a little trickier, correct? So like these nozzles or diffusers, they are just they're mostly adiabatic, what do you call, they are mostly adiabatic components. That is, they don't add or they don't remove any heat, but they can just transform your energy from high static head to low static head, or low static head to high static head. So these transformations, so therefore much cannot be done. So to overcome that, you can use different techniques. You can directly, you can add the excess air from the turbofan to you'll dilute that. If you've seen your combustion, like your dilution, in a combustion process, the core is diluted with certain amount of certain amount of air, and in there is secondary dilution and there is tertiary dilution. So in these three stages, you dilute the air, therefore to reduce the temperature. So that is also one method. Okay, so even if in spite of having all of this, there is some mechanism required to reduce the temperature on the turbines. Okay, so there are different techniques to reduce this temperature. One is convection, impingement, film cooling, and full cover film cooling and transpiration. I think all of this are just an advancement in convection. Okay, there is no much difference. Everything actually looks somewhat similar. So all of the techniques will use convection. Importantly, okay, they use convection. It's just that you advance it a little bit further in the each case. Okay, so what is convection? So we have seen in types of heat transfer: conduction, convection, and radiation. So convection is a form of heat transfer where, let us say you have, let us say you are eating hot soup. So if you are eating hot soup with your spoon, so you take the spoon and then blow some air on the soup first. So in your spoon, so you just blow some air. So what you're doing, you're literally using an external fluid just so it can take away the excess heat that is present in the hot soup. Correct. So you're decreasing the temperature by blowing air on it. So you're using another fluid to reduce the temperature of your soup. So on a similar fashion, so if this is an element of your turbine blade, so you're just adding cooling air on the turbine just so it can take away excess heat and thereby reducing the overall temperature of the turbine blades. Okay, so it is as simple as that. So you just use convection techniques, that is, you're using an external fluid which is mostly cooling air in a jet engine, and then you're removing the heat. This is called as convection cooling. So convection cooling air, in convection cooling air was injected through the airfoil attachment and to the inside of airfoil. So airfoil, you mean that if you take one single blade, you call it as an airfoil. Correct. So if you take the cross section of it, it is nothing but an airfoil. So the cold air was discharged at the blade tip. Development has led to multi-pass intercooling. The blades are either cast using cores to form cooling passages or forged with holes of any size and shape that are produced by electrochemical drilling. So to enhance the convection cooling, so if you remember, or if you have look at your two-wheeler automobile, so you do know that the radiator is not a solid body. Okay, it has been cut in different planes. Correct. Even though it is solid, it has got too many layers to it. So if you have too many layers to it, more air can pass through it. So similarly, your blade can also be manufactured in any of such fashion so that you can more air can pass through the turbine blade. So you're trying to incorporate the same technique and then cooling your turbine blade. Okay, so as we go on in the next heat transfer techniques, all of this is just refining that convection or trying to send more air, thereby dispersing more heat to it. Okay, so more heat can be carried away by the cooling air or a fluid if necessary. Okay, so next technique is called impingement cooling. So what happens in impingement cooling? So if this is your blade, if this is your turbine blade, inside the turbine blade you have a hollow passage. So through this hollow passage, you send cooling air. So this cooling air will now pass inside the turbine and then extract the heat out of it. So if you can see, if this was your turbine blade cross section, a jet of cooling air will go inside the blade and thereby collecting all the heat from inside out. Okay, so this is called impingement cooling, or sometimes you also call it as jet impingement cooling. Okay, in this high intensity form of convection cooling, the cooling air is blasted on the inner surface of the airfoil by high velocity air jets, permitting an increased amount of heat to be transferred to the cooling air. Okay, so this cooling method can be restricted to desired section of the airfoil to maintain even temperature over the entire surface. For instance, the leading edge of the blades needs to be cooled more than the mid-chord section of the trailing edge. So what this statement says is that the leading edge of the airfoil in a given cross section of a blade is subjected to higher temperatures as opposed to the trailing edges. Okay, why? Because we'll deeply discuss why this leading edge will face higher temperatures. Okay, so to overcome that, you can only incorporate the impingement cooling somewhere restricted to this area, so that you'll balance out the temperature. So let us say the temperature here is about 800 degree Kelvin and here is about 1500 Kelvin. You can remove the excess temperature from here, so thereby balancing the 800 degree Kelvin on both the places. Okay, so that is one thing you can do with impingement cooling. So film cooling, so like I said, it is all convection heat transfer, but just that you are increasing, you're refining the cooling process, so thereby trying to extract more amount of heat. So in film cooling, what you'll do, you'll have numerous pores all over the turbine blade like this. Okay, so the coolant air will pass through the blade and a thin layer. So film is nothing but a thin layer, correct? So a thin layer of cold air will actually be attached to the body of the blade. So if you see this blue lines, so they are the cold air and this is the hot intake. So a layer of cold air will be formed on the blade. Okay, so thereby the hot air need not even touch the blade. I mean, that is not possible, but to say so, it is not at all touching, it is just imparting the energy and then it is simply going. So thereby the temperature is maintained in the turbine blade, but it has got some of its own drawbacks. So one thing is causes turbine losses due to injection into the boundary layer. So you are actually disrupting the boundary layer by forming a film over it, correct? So if too much air is used or is ejected at high speed, it could penetrate the boundary layer. So it will destroy your boundary separation. So it will create boundary separation. So thereby the blade will stall and then uneven. You have seen the rotating stall, how rotating stall forms in your compressor blade. Similar situation can occur here, and the effectiveness of energy extraction will become very less. So thereby efficiency of your turbine will greatly reduce. Okay. So then full film cooling. So that is what you will try to, same thing, but the holes will be the number of holes here will be very high compared to your previous one. Next is called transpiration cooling. So here transpiration cooling is what it is, the material that you use. This is actually of a combustor and a nozzle, but to speak of a turbine, so transpiration, so what is transpiration? It is something like breathing. Okay, so it is like a sponge. So imagine if you soak a sponge in water, how quickly it will absorb all of the water. The material that you design your blade with will be like that. okay, will be like a sponge. So once you force, so this is a hole, so once you force air into it, air will pass throughout the blade, literally throughout the blade. Air will pass through it, just like how a sponge soaks water. Air will pass throughout the blade, so thereby effectively, more effective than what we have discussed so far, by reducing, so more effectively it can take away the heat. Okay, so transpiration is nothing but, like I said, the word itself says breathing. So you're breathing in air into your turbine or any given component for that matter. So this is taking an example of combustor. Okay, so in that you'll have this layer, and then you'll again have a thin layer of film forming over it, and then heat is rejected. So like I said, what we saw was only advancement to your convection heat transfer. Okay, I'll just read it. Transpiration cooling of a porous blade wall is the most efficient cooling technique and requires the least cooling air in comparison with other technique. It involves the use of a porous material through which the cooling air is forced into the boundary layer to form a relatively cooling insulating film or a layer. Okay, the film will mostly impinge on this. Okay, why? Because the structure is like that. The boundary separation as compared to your film cooling is very less in this case. Okay, so we'll see the disadvantage. The efficient transpiration cooling, the pore should be small, which leads to problems of blockage due to oxidation and foreign contaminate. Okay, so like I said, it is designed in a way that it is like as small as a sponge, so that can, if there is any chemical degradation in the material, it can block the holes, so thereby not effectively removing. And also one more disadvantage, it is not easy to manufacture. Okay, the cost involved in it is relatively higher compared to other techniques. So it is a balance when you're designing this sort of cooling techniques. So how efficient you want the turbine blade to be, or what temperature is it subjected to, or how much money or how much economics that you are trying to invest on it. Considering all of this, you'll choose one of the technique and then come up with your solution. That is about turbine cooling. So turbine cooling, even though it is necessary, there are some disadvantages to it, to the overall turbine cooling. Okay, so once you should have a turbine cooling mechanism, to have a mechanism, the manufacturing process of that turbine blade will now differ. So therefore it will add to the cost of production of overall turbine blades and turbine blade reliability. Correct. So since what do you call this? You're cutting down materials. You call it optimization in your ANSYS later on. So what is optimization? You'll learn later on. So while doing so, since it is not just a structural member which is subjected to loads, it is subjected to varieties of amounts of loads. So one is the load which is it is directly taking, it is the force load, and then there is thermal load acting on it, and then it is subjected to varying temperature. So when it is on the ground, it is not even, it is exposed to atmosphere. Correct. So when it is running from ground to the takeoff, and then it will be subjected to a very high temperature, and when it is landing, it is again subjected to a very low temperature. So there are actually methods, there are additional methods. So if you're taking off from a hot country and landing in a cold country, the heat dissipation rate should somewhat be constant. Okay, when you're landing in a cold country, the turbine blades should not should not cool down all of a sudden. It should cool down in a certain process. When you're landing in a hot country, it should not be prolonged. The cooling rate should not be prolonged. It should be maintained. Okay, so the cooling time must be constant. So if at all, if this is not being maintained, okay, so it will undergo fatigue. So then there will be another failure methods. Okay, so we are talking way ahead of us. So there are many factors that comes into picture. So once you go into cooling methods, keeping all of these factors in mind, you'll have to design your turbine blade. So loss of turbine work, because you're using some amount of coolant in it. So the coolant is absorbing the temperature which you want to utilize to extract power. Okay, so imagine if you're able to extract the the work, even at above 2000 degree Kelvin, the work extracted would be very high. But because of the limitation of the turbine blade, your work is coming down. So because you're adding coolant to it, the temperature is getting reduced. So thereby overall work extracted is also getting reduced. Okay. And losses due to cooling air being mixed with hot streams, which is common. What happens when a cooled air is mixed with hot gas stream? So next we'll see how the heat transfer is occurring and how it is affecting the overall boundary layer. So like we saw before, that the leading edge will face the highest temperature as opposed to your trailing edge. Why? Because once the stream comes, okay, so let us say from your combustion, it is coming into your turbine stage. The first point of contact for the hot gases is your leading edge. So thereby that will create a stagnation point in your leading edge. So once it creates a stagnation point on the leading edge, the total static temperature is the highest. Correct. So like we have seen in compressors how while we are seeing the performance of a compressor, when we draw the isentropic lines and adiabatic lines, how we see the actual temperature is a little lower compared to the above temperature. So I mean, I'm not comparing we cannot compare both of the cases, but you can see that at stagnation point all the states are relatively higher. So if you talk about the pressure, that is the total pressure point. If we talk about temperature, that is the total temperature point or the total static temperature point. Correct. So therefore at stagnation point the temperature will be highest. So and at all other places the temperature will normally be lesser because the total static temperature around them is not stagnant. Correct. So apart from that, because the temperature is high, the boundary layer across the blade is also different. So if you can see, initially it is turbulent, and then as you go across it, it will become transition, and there is a possibility of boundary layer separation as you go to the trailing edge, and there is also a possibility of wake formation because of the temperature imbalance that is occurring. Okay, so the hot gases from the combustion chamber strikes the leading edge of the turbine blades, which is the stagnation point. The flow comes to an halt. When the flow comes to an halt, thermally the total pressure is equal to the static temperature, which we already know. The blade feels the entire total temperature of the gas flow. This means the static pressure plus the kinetic head the gas is carrying. The entire thing is felt over here at the stagnation point. So the stagnation point is indeed the hottest spot on the blade surface. As the blade picks up speed, it actually drops of temperature, and then through the transition from laminar to turbulent, as the flow over the gas blade surface, the gas actually accelerates. As it accelerates, the local temperature, the static temperature reduces. So from stagnation point to the leading edge, it'll accelerate. The flow of air will accelerate because of the way the blade is designed. Correct. So therefore it will take away the static temperature. So therefore the trailing edge you'll have at a lower temperature. So this will create an temperature imbalance, and thereby creating a varied boundary condition. Once laminar, transition, and then turbulent, and then it can go. It can possibly create a shock boundary layer interaction, which causes the flow separation. So that is how the heat transfer is taking place in a turbine cooling. So next we'll talk about losses in turbines. So first is the tip clearance loss. Okay, so possibly I think we'll just go to the first slide. So here if you see the enclosing and the turbine blade. Okay, so this is the enclosing and this is the turbine blade. So between those two, there is a small gap left behind. Okay, so this is the enclosing of the engine, and this is the blade. Between the leading edge and the enclosing, there is a small gap. Okay, why do we have that gap? We have that gap because when the blades are heating up, okay, so when the blades are heating up, they expand. When it is subjected, because it is a metal, basically, this metal expands. So this metal expands, and it will try to the expanded to facilitate some space for the expanded blade, you leave that tip clearance. Okay, so you can't leave it such that it can form a fit. So if it forms a fit, it will scratch the surface, and then blade is subjected to damage. Okay, so you can't have it completely enclosed. Therefore, there is some gap even after expanding. So in that gap, fluid leaks through it. Okay, fluid leaks through the gap, and if that is leaking, then energy is not being extracted. So therefore, that is one sort of losses which occurs. And secondary flow loss, which we have discussed already in your compressors. So let's say your turbine is axial, correct? So your turbine is axial. As and when you go through the stages, okay, this will sound similar to your annulus loss and secondary loss, and those are somewhat similar. So as and when you go through the stages, it is not axial throughout, correct? So like we discussed, if it is starting from point 1, by the time it comes out, it would have taken too many cycles inside the turbine, correct? So during this process, there are vortices formation within the turbine. Okay, and the transformation from axial flow to this rotational flow inside the turbine, even though the overall flow is axial, will contribute to the secondary flow losses. And then we have profile losses. Profile losses, you can strictly just write it down as friction losses. So your air will meet a lot of skin, correct? Skin as in it will meet a lot of surfaces. It has to go through a lot of surfaces. So while passing through all of these surfaces, huge amount of friction loss. If you see in your pipe flows, your friction loss is one of the major losses. So even in this case, it is a major loss. It will it is a major loss. So thereby it will reduce the overall performance in the turbine. Okay, and then you call your annulus loss. Annulus loss is similar to secondary flow loss, but just that annulus loss comes with the number of stages. So as and when you increase the number of stages, the greater the number of stages, the effectiveness of conversion or extraction of power in the later stages will be reduced because of the secondary flow loss, along with profile flow loss will contribute to annulus loss. So if you just read all of this once, you can easily get through it.